Hey, what's up, everybody? Fred Minnick here, and today I am going to review what might be one of the most discussed online releases of the year. This is a little media sample I have here. It's the Daniel Weller. It's almost 12 years old, 94 proof. I'm going to tell you more about that product. Now, Daniel Weller is the grandfather of William LaRue Weller, which, of course, Weller 12, William LaRue Weller, which is a part of the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, Weller, which is the brand that just kind of skyrocketed in the last 15 years. I remember when I was buying Weller 12 for like $25, and that was the first product that I kind of heralded as like whiskey of the year. When I was with Tasting Panel, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best whiskey in the year. And then bartenders started pouring it, making drinks, and it kind of like caught on. So I used to buy Weller 12 like it was Jim Beam White Label back in the day. So little kind of interesting history there with me personally. Now a little bit more about this. Of course, Weller is a wheated bourbon, and wheated bourbon is a style of bourbon that uses wheat as its secondary grain or its flavor grain instead of the more common grain in rye. Of course, to be bourbon, it has to be predominantly corn, and then you can add a second grain, and almost everybody adds barley for the enzymes. Now, historically, people preferred rye, but there was a distillery after Prohibition called Stitzel Weller that really put its claim on wheat. So Pappy Van Winkle and his distiller at the time, Will McGill, really did believe in using wheat as a secondary grain. They thought it created a smoother profile, a sweeter profile, and their marketing ads would say like Weller has a whisper of wheat. So a really incredible story there about one major distillery championing wheat. Maker's Mark comes out in the 1950s, and they use wheat as well. And so it was basically Weller, Old Fitzgerald, and the other brands coming out of Stitzel Weller and Maker's Mark for a very long time. Now, of course, everybody uses wheat, but the wheated bourbon phenomenon really does not blow up until we start seeing people gravitate toward Pappy Van Winkle and then Weller. Maker's Mark carried the torch, but Maker's Mark, when they're talking about their whiskey, it's about Maker's Mark. It's not necessarily about the wheated bourbon category. So the wheated bourbon from Stitzel Weller was special. Everything has kind of since been cycling out and going more toward that Heaven Hill style made at Bernheim and the Buffalo Trace style. And, of course, Maker's Mark, which, by the way, they're really up in their game here. So I want to tell you a little bit more about this product. All right, so the most common types of wheat that are used in wheated bourbon are either like soft red winter wheat. These are what are most commonly used. This is actually made from an ancient Egyptian strain called emmer wheat. And this was distilled at their micro still. And so this is something that they're kind of classifying this as an experimental. So this was distilled on the micro still that you will see at the end of a Buffalo Trace tour, or right about toward the end. You'll see that when you're coming out. Now, here is the rub I see on this one is that it is $500. It has an SRP of $500. And while that's probably accurate, and it does not matter if I say I like it or don't like it, or someone else says they like it or don't like it, people are going to buy this product because it is Weller. Weller sells out, and it does not matter if someone says that it's good or bad. People are going to buy it. It's the same with Blanton's. It doesn't matter how many people say that Blanton's is overrated or Blanton's is too expensive when it's marked up by a retailer. it does not matter. There's some kind of weird, subliminal messaging from Buffalo Trace. I kid, but anything they make, it's like gold to the whiskey community. So it doesn't matter what I say here or what any other reviewer says. This is gonna sell, and once someone buys it for 500, if a retailer sells it for that, it'll in 10 years it'll probably sell for 5,000. Who knows? I don't know. That being said, I will tell you whether I think it's worth $500, but you got to realize that when I'm tasting whiskey, I try not to think about the price during the taste of it. I try to talk about it afterward because, it's not fair. It's not fair to the whiskey. The marketing side of it takes it to 500, but the whiskey itself, is it good? Is it bad? What's it like? What's it similar to? That's what I'm going to try to do during this tasting. So here we go. Kind of an old school media sample too, by the way. It smells like a lot of it smells like a warehouse, like a bourbon warehouse, which that sounds kind of like a cop out of a note, but it's kind of that rustic, earthy, woody bourbon in the air smell. And then after that, a little vanilla. I get a lot of orange on this. So there's like this, when you're peeling an orange, and like that zest pops up, or you get hit in the nose or the face with the juices. That's what it reminds me of there. Okay, this is bottled at 94 proof. It comes off much hotter, so it's like stuck in my throat right now. Let me taste that again. But my first impression is at 94 proof. It was very, very hot. Second taste, maybe my palate, maybe I just went in the wrong angle, went straight to my throat. I don't know. But second taste does not come off as like an over alcohol forward bourbon. I think it just kind of went down. You ever drank something and it like went down the wrong pipe? It felt like you're like, ah. Then again, it could be, it could just be, I don't know what it could be. Maybe I just got choked too much at jiu-jitsu today, which possible, absolutely possible. So let me taste this again. I'm spent so much time talking about the alcohol. I feel like I'm just completely dropping my my acumen here on the tasting. Like nearly 2 decades worth of tasting and training just out the window. It hit my throat. Oh my God, it hit my throat. It's too hot. Ah. Sorry, I have issues. Okay. Now that I'm done with all the drama. It does not approach my palate like the buttery kind of mouthfeel dripping down the jawline, curling up. It doesn't approach like that. It approaches more like a craft product does, in that it's kind of oily. By oily, I mean like there's a lot of essence of grain in this. It has a lot of bread-like characteristic to it when you break it down the flavor profile, but when you look at it from the mouthfeel, if you think of like how like oil fills on your tongue, like olive oil or some kind of a salad dressing, it beads in a particular place and then it kind of runs off, it shoots off, just like oil does on like a surface that's going down. It like beads together and moves together. It approaches very similar to the tongue like that, whereas some of the other wheated bourbons, some of the other Wellers, the Pappy Van Winkles, even to an extent some of the Heaven Hill products, their weeded bourbon styles will kind of come in like a full on wave, and encompass the entire tongue. So that point right there is an interesting differentiation, and I'm sure it's got to do with a different wheat. And I would love to learn how that was different in fermenting and distilling. But I feel like there's a lot more grain characteristics here than we would normally see, and I like that. I really do. I like that. Let's go again. I get some fig. After I really break it down after the palate, like how it feels. I get a lot of fig. I get some honey. I get some what's this bread? It's like a chocolate swirl bread, kind of a desserty thing. It's like a bread pudding. Even you could say like this chocolate bread thing or bread pudding, and definitely get a boatload of that. So there's like some chocolate there, and it's on the tongue for a good amount of time. So it's got a pretty significant finish. The one thing I will say on it is that this is not going to be for your traditional Kentucky bourbon drinker. This is not going to be for your traditional weeded bourbon hunter. I think a lot of people are going to taste this and be really thrown off because of that grain significance. Like it just hits differently, and it tastes differently. I don't taste caramel in this. I do not taste caramel. Let me say that again. We have nearly a 12-year-old weeded bourbon, and I do not taste caramel. I get some chocolate. I get a slight hint of vanilla, but it's very like nuance of grain and very powerful with that. And I think that's gonna rub people the wrong way. I personally love it. I think this is an incredible expression of whiskey making, taking an old grain, that's not used, and making it in a small still. So my hat's off to Buffalo Trace for going outside of their norm, and I'm excited to see more from this experimentation lineup. But I personally like this a lot. I just know I know the public out there, and I know that 75% of you Kentucky bourbon drinkers will not like this. I don't think this is going to be a fit for most of you all. In terms of a comparison, there's not many comparisons I can make because there's not many grain forward 10, 12-year-old products out there, but something aged from Woodstone out of Cincinnati, which is a real small distillery that's been around since the early 90s. They have some old grain forward bourbons that are like 10, 12 years old, so that's one. Spirits of French Lake comes close, but that's pretty young, too young for a proper comparison here. But the essence of grain is definitely similar. So, look, I would not recommend this unless you are a fan of grain nuance and if you like fig as well. But I do think that at $500, it's a small release. It's not something that you're going to be able to find in stores, most likely, and people are going to mark it up, and it's not going to be worth it. It's not going to be worth your money. It's just not. But if you are someone who is just a super uber fan of the essence of grain like I am, then yeah, it is worth your money because there's not a sample size of whiskeys out there that have this unique flavor profile. Just let me confirm that. I really like it. And it's finishing with a hint of oak. So for me to say I like it with a hint of oak, that's insane. But the fact is, I love grain. Absolutely love grain. And that's okay. And if you don't like that, that's okay too. But so that's my full-on review of Daniel Weller. Good luck out there hunting. And just remember, my reviews are my opinion. Everyone's got a different palate, so taste for yourself. And if you can, get someone else's money to buy the bottle. That's going to do it for this little tasting. Be safe out there. And remember, vodka sucks unless it's being used to clean up a dead cat. Cheers.